I think everybody except for me loved this book. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel for another review and discussion. I've been working my way through the International Booker Shortlist, and next up we have On the Calculation of Volume number 1 by Solvej Balle. This book is the first of 7, and I have absolutely no idea how this concept is going to be dragged into a 7-book series because not a lot happens. In fact, I would really struggle to spoil this book because genuinely the way I would plug this as Groundhog Day if literally nothing happens. And if you disagree with me on this, name one thing that happens. All of my Litsy friends and Goodreads friends seem to have thought this book was absolutely fantastic. They find the prose mesmerising, they find just the way that the author writes fascinating, enthralling, and kind of really drew them into the plot. So I'm not entirely sure where it went wrong for me. There is one thing that this book does absolutely brilliantly, and I believe it is intentional, and that is the sense of creeping existential dread. For whatever my thoughts were on the book itself, whether I enjoyed it, whether I thought it was any good, there is one thing that is absolutely clear and absolutely certain, and that is that I was not unaffected by it. This book made me feel dreadful. Like, oh, it was so claustrophobic and isolating. Before I go into telling you a bit more about the book, so this was, I believe, originally self-published and has recently been translated from the Danish. Please let me have got that right this time. Danish, yes. I believe only the first 4 have been translated so far. You can definitely get the second volume. I was in Waterstones the other day and I was like, and I picked it up and then I thought, no, Ray, you can't do this to yourself. You already felt crummy enough after reading the first one. So essentially we have a woman, I believe her name is Tara Selter, yeah, and she is living a perfectly normal day. She is a bookseller and she goes to Paris to do some buying for the business for her that her and her husband run, and she catches up with an old friend, buys some books, and when she wakes up the next day, it turns out it is still the 18th of November. So it's Groundhog Day, basically. I'm not sure if that was the original use of that concept, but it's certainly the certainly the one that popularised it. Anyway, she first notices that something isn't quite right when a chap at breakfast in the hotel drops a slice of toast. And this is about the level of, this is probably the most exciting thing that happens in the book. The dropping of the toast in exactly the same way. That is kind of peak action for this book. And she thinks actually that piece of toast fell in a very familiar way. Something's not right here. And then it all makes sense when she goes around everywhere and her friend doesn't recognise that she's been there. The fiance of her friend that she met the day before doesn't recognise her, and it's like nothing had happened. But certain things do carry over, like she burnt herself on the stove at her friend's house, and the mark still seems to be there and kind of heals up normally. So there's a few additional twists on the story, and she does move back straight away to her house and, calls her partner up and tells him. And another thing that I found quite strange about this book is he believes her. Like, instead of being like, are you sure are you sure they didn't put something in your tea when you were over your friends? He believes her, and there's not even a kind of battle to be won there. He's just like, yeah, why would you make up something like that? But then when she wakes up the next day, she's at home and it's still the 18th of November, but her physical form is elsewhere. So it's not like Groundhog Day where wherever he goes, he wakes up in the same place, in the same hotel room. There is a kind of spatial difference there. And initially in the book, her initial reaction is to kind of tell her partner this every day, and initially it's quite nice, and they just spend some time together discussing it, trying to find out about it. But as the days go by and by and by, she feels the distance between them growing and growing, and it becomes increasingly alienating. And all of those days, all of those 18th of Novembers that she has experienced start to come between them and start to affect their relationship. So eventually she moves into the spare bedroom, and she's in the house, and she can hear like him moving around the house in an orchestral kind of way. She knows when everything's about to happen. And I say about to happen, and nothing, again, I cannot stress this enough, nothing happens in this book. But she can kind of feel him moving around the house in a very kind of, way that she's expecting, in a very predictable way now. And yeah, it becomes more and more alienating, and she can't, she feels that she can no longer carry on dealing with his anxiety in the morning and waiting for him to kind of find it funny by the evenings. So yeah, and this goes on for the duration of the book. And one thing that is brilliant about this book, and I will say this is done extremely well, is you really, really feel like this is hell. You really would not want this to happen to you. That kind of feeling of connection to someone you love, and it almost being like a honeymoon period at the beginning when you're just living in the moment with each other, that turning into this desolate, mundane nothingness where you're coping with this nothingness all by yourself. It's horrible. It really is horrible. So even though I spent the whole book bored out of my mind, particularly in the middle, and wanting it to be over and wanting to be doing anything other than reading it, it captures that kind of, that this would be a nightmare scenario so very, very well. And I think that's probably why people love it, because I think they find that fascinating, that kind of sense of almost psychological horror. And the trouble is, for me, I just found myself wishing that anything would move the story forward, even if she was going around town doing different things. And there are books that don't say very much, and whose prose and kind of goings on are very, very sparse, but like that I'm still kind of enthralled by. Not much is happening in Solenoid, for example, and there's a lot of existential dread in that as well, although not quite to the level of On the Calculation of Volume. I would say that this book, the dread kind of that came to me through this book was, so much worse. And just as a feeling of hopelessness as well. And I think part of that, if this stood alone, if it was just these 180 pages and that was the entirety of the story, I probably wouldn't have felt quite so helpless, because I would have been wondering if she manages to kind of slip back into the regular timeline. I would have wondered about it. But because I know that this is going to go on for another 6 books, I was kind of waiting for something to happen. But on the other hand, I also knew that this wasn't going to resolve itself, because I am aware of a couple of kind of concepts from later novels and by that I just mean that I know it goes on for a long time. Like I say, I was in Waterstones the other day and I thought, should I pick up book 2? And I don't know if that's just the book collector in me, if that's the completer finisher in me, because I'm always doing this. I read a book and I'm like, I didn't like that, I didn't enjoy that, I didn't want it, and then I'm like, but I could carry on with the series. And then you end up with like an enormous room full of books that you haven't got around to reading yet. So I didn't buy it the other day, but I don't know, maybe if they release them all in like a 7-volume book, then it'll feel more like I'm going on one journey rather than, I don't know. I gave it 3 stars. I don't think this was a terrible book at all. I don't think it was terrible, but I did not enjoy the reading experience. This is probably one of my least favourite reading experiences I've had in a long time. I didn't find it mean-spirited or horrible like I did, you know, there are certain books that I read that I disliked for entirely different reasons. I just found it so frustrating that nothing was happening. And I don't know, it filled me full of dread as well, because I was like, do something, you know, you've got all these days, you've got unlimited November the 18th, you can do anything with this time, and you're sitting in the spare room listening to your husband having a wee. And it's like, do something, do anything other than that. You know, it wasn't even. And then I look at my own life and I'm thinking, I've just been scrolling all day. Like, I am wasting my life. And, you know, that kind of introspection, I don't think I'd do any better. If I was stuck in Groundhog Day, I would probably be stuck in the spare room having a nap and wondering what to do next. And, you know, I'd like to think that I'd learn a million different languages, learn to play lots of musical instruments, and use this unlimited time to do amazing, amazing things. But realistically, it would just be, you know, another day of me wasting my time. And I think maybe it just hit a little bit close to home. Maybe the concentration on the mundane and the way that we use our time in such poor ways, maybe that's what got to me, and maybe that's why I felt so itchy reading it, because I read because I want a story, I want some escapism, I want to feel like I'm, you know, or I want to feel like I'm bettering my brain in some way, that I'm, you know, getting a new understanding of a character or a person, you know. So there's lots of different reasons I read for, and this was very much not ticking any of the boxes from that point of view. But on the other hand, I can't say it's not clever, because I wasn't ambivalent to it. It wasn't like it wasn't like, I'm going to remember it. It's going to stick in my head. For better, for worse, it's going to stick in my head. So yeah, it's a 3-star at the moment, because I don't think I can give more than 3 stars to any book that I actively avoided picking up. Although I did give A Little Life 5 stars, and I actively avoided picking that up for many months. But that was because the content was so, yeah, if anyone's read A Little Life, they'll know exactly what I mean there. Anyway, I don't know what to make of this book. I suspect it might win the International Booker Prize. I can see why it would. And yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on this one, because it's been about a week or so since I read it. It's very unsettling. I usually like psychological horror. I just wish there was a little bit more to hang on to. But then if there was more to hang on to, then that creeping, claustrophobic feeling of dread possibly wouldn't have been quite so effective. So those are my thoughts. I've got 4 more to go before the announcement. I'm hoping I'm going to get around to reading them all. The next one is either going to be Hiromi Kawakami's Under the Eye of the Big Bird, or possibly the Leopard Skin Hat. I haven't bought Heart Lamp yet. What was the other one? Not doing very well on the old journalism here, am I? Yeah. Whatever it is, it'll be quite short, because it's a very, very short list. It's a very short list, and again, I'm still reading Solenoid, even though that only made the long list. So expect reviews for those to come. If you want to watch out for those, then don't forget to like and subscribe. It's been a pleasure. Lovely to see you all.